Captain Christopher Pike is one of the rare characters in Star Trek who walks through the universe carrying a secret that would break most people. Long before the final chapters of his story arrive, Pike already knows where his journey is heading. He knows the choice he will eventually make, he knows the lives that decision will save, and he knows the personal cost waiting for him at the end of that path. For most Starfleet officers, the future represents possibility. It represents discovery, adventure, and the excitement of stepping into the unknown. But for Pike, the future is something far more complicated. It is a shadow following him through every mission, every conversation, and every quiet moment aboard the Enterprise. He isn't searching for answers about what comes next because he already has them. The question that defines his entire character is much harder. What does a person do when they know the future cannot be changed? And as Star Trek Strange New Worlds moves closer towards the timeline of the original series, that question becomes more important than ever because the series is slowly approaching the moment Pike has spent years carrying in his mind. The closer the story gets to canon, the heavier his burden becomes. But the tragedy of Christopher Pike isn't simply that he knows his fate. The true tragedy is that he knows exactly what is waiting for him and still chooses to lead with kindness, still chooses to protect his crew, and still chooses to believe that every moment before that ending has meaning. The producers of Strange New Worlds have recently acknowledged that the series is moving closer to established Star Trek history, and while that may sound like a simple limitation of the timeline, it actually creates one of the most emotionally powerful conflicts in the entire franchise. Every Star Trek captain faces impossible decisions, but Pike's situation is completely different, because he isn't making choices without knowing the consequences. Every command decision he makes exists alongside the knowledge that one day he will face the moment he saw coming. That changes the way we understand him as a leader. When Pike takes risks, it isn't because he believes he is invincible. When he protects his crew, it isn't because he expects everything to work out perfectly. He understands more than anyone that life is fragile, and that understanding shapes every part of his command style. This is why Pike never feels like a captain chasing glory. He isn't trying to create a legend. He isn't trying to prove himself. He is simply trying to make the time he has with his crew matter. The people around him are not just officers serving under his command. They are the reason he continues moving forward despite knowing the future waiting for him. What makes Pike's story so different from other Star Trek captains is that his knowledge of the future does not turn him into someone obsessed with changing destiny. In most science fiction stories, knowing the future becomes a temptation. A character sees something terrible coming and immediately begins searching for a way to prevent it. They fight against the timeline, they question every decision, and they become consumed by the possibility that one different choice could rewrite everything. But Pike's journey takes a much more difficult path. He knows there are things he cannot control, and instead of allowing that knowledge to make him afraid of living, he uses it to become more present. That is the hidden tragedy of his character. The future has taken away his ability to be surprised, but it has also given him a deeper appreciation for everything happening in front of him. Every conversation matters because he understands how temporary those moments are. Every member of his crew matters because he knows how much a single life can change the course of history. Pike is not a captain trying to escape his destiny. He is a captain trying to make peace with it. And that might be the hardest challenge any Starfleet officer has ever faced. This is also why the way Pike leads the Enterprise feels so different from the captains who come after him. When Anson Mount describes Pike as the heart of Star Trek, that isn't just a description of his personality. It is the foundation of his entire philosophy. Pike understands that a starship is not powerful because of its technology or its weapons. It is powerful because of the people operating it. The Enterprise is not a machine that travels through space. It is a collection of individual lives, each carrying their own fears, dreams, mistakes, and hopes. Pike's greatest strength is that he sees those people before he sees their positions. He does not simply ask what an officer can do for the mission. He asks what the mission is doing to that person. That difference separates him from many leaders who believe command requires emotional distance. Pike proves that empathy is not a weakness in leadership. In many ways, it is the reason people trust him enough to follow him into impossible situations. And when you look at Pike through that lens, his relationship with Spock becomes even more meaningful. Spock is someone who has spent his life trying to understand the balance between emotion and logic. He has always struggled with where he belongs and how much of himself he should reveal to others. Pike represents the opposite approach. He does not see emotions as something that needs to be controlled or hidden away. He understands that emotions are part of what makes decisions meaningful. This is why Pike becomes such an important figure in Spock's life. He does not try to turn Spock into a different person. He does not force him to abandon his Vulcan identity or embrace humanity completely. Instead, he gives Spock the space to discover that both sides of himself can exist together. Pike's influence comes from understanding people, and that understanding comes from the one thing he can never forget. Every person around him has a limited amount of time. Every friendship, every conversation, and every opportunity to help someone is something that can disappear. The same idea applies to Number 1 and the rest of the Enterprise crew. Pike's command style is built around trust because he understands that a captain cannot carry the weight of the universe alone. The future he saw did not make him believe that everything was pointless. It made him realize that people are the only things worth fighting for. This is why his crew follows him so willingly. They don't follow Pike because they are afraid of him. They don't follow him because he demands loyalty. They follow him because he makes them feel valued. In a universe filled with powerful civilizations, advanced technology, and endless unknown dangers, Pike's greatest weapon is something far more simple. He makes people believe they matter. But this is also where his greatest curse begins to reveal itself. Because the same knowledge that allows Pike to appreciate his crew also creates a distance between him and everyone around him. There is a loneliness that comes with knowing something nobody else knows. Pike can share his fears with almost no one because the moment he reveals the truth, he changes the way people see him. Imagine sitting across from your closest friends and knowing that you are carrying information that could completely change their lives. Imagine knowing that every person around you is building a future that you already know will eventually lead to tragedy. That kind of knowledge creates a wall even when you are surrounded by people who love and respect you. This is the part of Pike's story that makes him such a tragic figure. From the outside, he looks like the ideal Starfleet captain. He is confident, compassionate, respected, and admired by his crew. But underneath that confidence is someone constantly carrying a burden he cannot put down. He has to continue acting like tomorrow is open and full of possibilities while knowing that one particular tomorrow has already been decided. He has to inspire hope while carrying fear. He has to guide others towards the future while knowing exactly what his own future contains. That contradiction is what makes Pike fascinating, because his strength and his pain come from the same place. And as Strange New Worlds approaches the point where it connects with the original series, the question becomes less about whether Pike can change his destiny and more about what that destiny reveals about him. The audience already knows where the road leads, but the journey is not about discovering the ending. It is about understanding the man who walks towards it. That is something Star Trek has always done at its best. It has never been only about exploring strange new worlds. It has always been about exploring the choices people make when faced with impossible circumstances. Pike's story asks one of the most important questions the franchise has ever asked. If you knew exactly how your story ended, would you still choose to make it a meaningful one? And that is the question that continues to define Christopher Pike. His future may be written, but his character is revealed by everything he chooses to do before he reaches it. The closer Star Trek Strange New Worlds gets to the events we already know are waiting for Christopher Pike, the more interesting his story becomes, because the question is no longer about whether fate can be avoided. The audience already knows the answer. The real mystery is understanding what kind of person chooses to keep moving forward after seeing the ending of their own story. That is what separates Pike from almost every other character in Star Trek. Many heroes are defined by their ability to overcome impossible odds, but Pike is defined by his willingness to face an impossible truth. He does not become great because he discovers a way to escape his destiny. He becomes great because he refuses to let that destiny take away his humanity. Every episode becomes another example of a man choosing meaning over fear. He could become distant. He could stop forming connections. He could treat every relationship as temporary because he knows how it ends. Instead, he does the opposite. He invests more. He cares more. He allows himself to experience every moment fully because he understands something most people spend their entire lives trying to learn. The value of a moment does not come from how long it lasts. It comes from the impact it leaves behind.